asked about his future, and he said that he just, quote, wanted to be appreciated. What has Will meant to the locker room for you for the last 6 seasons, and are you hoping he'll be back next year?
Well, of course, I hope he's back. Will is one of the few players on our roster, Mike, as you know, that have been here every day that I've been here. And obviously, you look at the 6-year progression, what we have been able to accomplish. Will Barton's definitely a big part of that. And he's filled many different roles: off the bench, starter, small forward, 2-guard, point guard at times. So yes, I would love for Will Barton to be back. Everything he brings to the team, that's on the court, off the court, in the locker room, from a culture standpoint. And it was really kind of interesting for me and great to see, very rewarding for me to see was, end of the season going into the first round against Portland, we had a lot of guys out to injury, key players out to injury, with Will Barton being one of those. And, you guys heard me say quite a few times during that first round, guys that weren't playing, like Jamal, like PJ, like Will Barton, they were terrific. They were engaged, which I think is a direct reflection of the culture that we have. I've even heard from other coaches of local teams, pro teams in our city, that have said they've seen players, if they're not able to play on the field, on the court, on the ice, whatever it may be, they check out. And Will and the rest of our players never did that. They were engaged, they were into it, and they were doing whatever they could to support their teammates, to provide energy and positivity. And I love that about Will. So yes, I hope he's back. He means a ton to me personally. He means a ton to this team and everything we've been able to accomplish these last 6 years. But ultimately, obviously, Will Barton will have to do whatever is best for he and his family. But me personally, I hope he's back here for a long time.
Next, we'll go to Matt Moore.
Michael, given the context of the season, limited practice time, all the interruptions, the schedule, everything else, the injuries, when you look back on your own performance and trying to assess what you've learned, is there a lot that you can really carry forward from the season? Or do you mostly want to put it behind you based off of how difficult the last year has been?
Well, I think really interesting question, Matt. And on one hand, to be just, completely transparent, I think there are a lot of us who are willing and ready and able to kind of put not just this past season, but last year's 83 days in the bubble behind us and start anew come September, October for the 2021-22 season. This has been a grind mentally, physically, emotionally. We've talked about that a lot this season. So as hard as it was, though, I think you always have to find ways to reflect upon the collective group. What did we do well? What did we not do well? What could we have done better? What did we learn? And then taking that a step further, obviously, and I'm still in the middle of this, constantly reflecting on me. And as the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, never being satisfied, understanding that there are always ways to get better personally. What could I have done better to help our team in that Phoenix series? We got swept. Ultimately, that falls on my shoulders. I'm the head coach, regardless of all the excuses and injuries, this, that, whatever you want to call it. We got swept, and that is never something that you feel good about, and I know I don't. So I don't shy away from that responsibility. I actually welcome it, because that is going to drive me to find ways to help this team be a better team next season. But in today's NBA, I'll say this, Matt, being an NBA head coach 20 years ago was being a head coach. What was really kind of just basketball. And no disrespect to the coaches 20 years ago, because you have a lot of legendary coaches that were phenomenal. But I think in today's day and age, I think being a head coach in the NBA, you are like a CEO. You're wearing a lot of hats. You have to be, yes, a very effective coach, X's and O's, game plan, You have to have the ability to relate and communicate with your players, 1 through 17. Rosters have only gotten bigger. They've gone from 12 to 13 to 15, now 17 players. You have to be able to get along with your front office, your ownership group. And you also have to be aware with what's going on in the world and to help lead some young men that maybe not really sure where they should be going in the midst of everything that this country is in the middle of still to this day. So I think I'm always trying to look inward and ask myself, where have I failed? Where have I done a decent job of helping this team? And ultimately with the goal of becoming much better in every area, because my hope is still to bring a championship to the city of Denver. That is what drives me. That is what drives our ownership group, our front office, and our players, is to ultimately hang a banner in Ball Arena after winning a world championship.
Next, we'll go to Chris Marlowe.
Hey, Coach. I wanted to ask you about a couple of your players. You mentioned P.J. Dozier. Obviously, he was kind of an overlooked loss this season when he couldn't play. I wanted to ask you about his potential for his role next year. And I also wanted to ask you about Zeke Naji. What kind of potential does Zeke have? We saw him sparingly. Sometimes he looked really good. Sometimes he looked, okay. What kind of potential, these two guys, how do you see their roles next year for your team?
Yeah, good to hear from you, Chris. And it was weird not seeing you and Scott Hastings all year. Missed seeing you, didn't really miss Hastings too much.
Well, thank you for that, Coach.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, let me start off with PJ. And you said something that I really agree with, often overlooked. I think, obviously, when Jamal Murray went down on April 12th, I think, in San Francisco, that was the biggest topic of discussion regarding the Denver Nuggets and their injuries. 2 nights later, Monte Morris, hamstring injury, that was talked about. Will Barton a week later, back in San Francisco. I think that place is cursed. Side note there. And then probably about a week after Will Barton goes down, PJ goes down. And that was the second time this season that we had lost PJ for an extended period of time. Let's go back to the first injury in Dallas. At that point in the season, Chris, as you know, PJ was playing phenomenal for us. And the thing that stands out about PJ Dozier is the versatility. Here's a young man, because of his size, his strength, he can play the 1, the 2, the 3. And there were times this year with modern NBA basketball, when teams are playing so small and we had injuries, so many injuries throughout the year, that PJ actually played some backup 4 for us. So you love his versatility. The knock, the question on PJ has always been, can he shoot the ball well enough from the 3-point line? And I think going into that Dallas game, I think he was hovering right around 40% from 3, which is a phenomenal number, as we all know. But he also showed last year in the bubble the defensive component, a guy that could guard 1s, 2s, 3s, and some 4s, a guy that could sit down on the perimeter and contain the basketball against the likes of a Jordan Clarkson, who's a reigning 6th man of the year. So losing PJ, you're losing not just the versatility on offense. He's a tremendous pick and roll player. He has the ability to get by his man, break his man down to get to the rim and finish, and he makes his teammates better. But what we also missed is that the defensive component, the ability to guard one-on-one. We don't have just terrific shot blocking on our team. Obviously, JaVale McGee provides that. We didn't get that till trade deadline. So PJ, the defensive component as well, was lost. When he gets back healthy, I think PJ has shown enough, and I trust him. I believe in him. I love him. I think he has a chance to be a real impactful player for us, and we've seen him do that already, Chris. Regarding Zeke Naji, obviously, when you're a young player coming to a team that just made an appearance in the Western Conference Finals, it's going to be really hard to get on the court because you're playing on a team that is hopefully competing for an NBA championship. And so Zeke Naji comes in, late 1st round pick, played center at Arizona, led the Pac-12 in double-doubles as a freshman. And when he did get a chance to play, to your point, and he knew he was getting those minutes because of injuries. He was in the rotation. I thought he did a really nice job for us. He showed he has the ability to stretch the floor, knock down threes, which is so important in today's NBA. He showed that he has the ability to be a really versatile defender. Again, he was a center in college, and this year he's playing probably mostly 4, some 3, and a little backup 5 when he got minutes. So I think the sky's the limit. And the reason I say that is one thing about Zeke Naji, and I give his mother and father and the whole Naji family credit. He is one of the hardest workers on our team. The guy comes to work early, he leaves late, and he never got down when he wasn't playing. Did he like it? Was he frustrated? Of course, but he never allowed it to affect his mindset, his professionalism, his work ethic, and the ability to improve every day. And obviously, I think this will be a big summer for Zeke, continuing to work on his perimeter skills, away from the basket, handling, passing, shooting, and having the ability to be one of those defensive players that can guard all over the floor. And I think he has that in him. So very excited about who Zeke Naji is now, but even more excited about the player he's going to become.
Next, we'll go to David Aldridge.
Michael, how are you, sir?
Good. Thank you, David.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about Coach Unseld on your staff. Obviously, he's going to be a head coach soon. I wonder what you have seen from him the last couple of years in terms of development, growth, what he already brought to the table, and what you think he brings, what he will bring to a team if they hire him as head coach.
Well, this is probably going to be my favorite question of the day because, you know, Wes Unseld probably doesn't get nearly enough credit, in my opinion, David, because obviously I know him. He's been on my staff now for 6 years. We worked in Golden State together and just have long known him being around the NBA for the last 20 years like Wes has. I've been reaching out to different people with these job openings, trying to really pump him up because he's not a self-promoter. That is one thing that I love about Wes, but I also wish he was more of a self-promoter at times because he's content to just do his job, do it very well, and allow the results to speak for themselves. And unfortunately, you know, you see all these other people being interviewed, having their name plugged, and getting jobs, and it seems like Wes is never one of those guys. And I have a feeling it's going to change this summer. And that'll be a huge loss for me, but I wouldn't be more happier for Wes, his wife Evelyn, their 2 children. Wes grew up in this game, as you know, David, with his father, who was a legend as a player, coach, front office in Washington. Wes has a tireless work ethic. He's in the office at 6 a.m. He's the last one to leave, and I'm not just saying that to make him sound good. If you ask anybody around our building, they will agree with that. He's very educated, great communicator, knows his stuff, and has a unique way of relating to our players. He's a great balance for me. I know this is going to come as a shock to all the members of the local media. I can be a little emotional. I know you're surprised by that. Wes is a great counterbalance for me because he is the exact opposite. And that's one of the reasons I hired him. Aside from having a terrific basketball mind, and he's not just a defensive coach. That's one thing I hate about having Wes Unseld as a defensive coordinator, David Adelman as an offensive coordinator. Well, people automatically think that Wes doesn't know offense, and that couldn't be further from the truth. But Wes has a really calm demeanor, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, very positive. And I know for a fact that when given an opportunity, whether it's in Orlando, whether it's in Washington, or one of these other jobs, that he would do a great job developing young players. He would instill a culture like the one we have here in Denver that's allowed us to improve every single year. And most importantly, I think the organization would be extremely proud of how Wes and his family would represent the organization in their community. The guy is a home run. And like I said, I don't want to lose him because he's been that valuable for me in this team, but I also want him to have that opportunity he deserves. He has more than paid his dues. It's about time somebody gave him the chance to lead their team.
Next, we'll go to Joel Rush.
Hey,
Hey, Coach. Good to see you. Tim Connolly was talking last week about, I think in 2016, you and he and Josh kind of got all on the same page in terms of really prioritizing building the culture. And that has obviously produced successful results. But in terms of Nikola Jokic over the last year, we heard a lot about him leading by example and working out after games and all of this. Just how important in his development has it been for him to kind of transition from like a building block of that culture into one of the creators of that culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously Nicola's coming off of a historic year, first MVP in franchise history, and a well-deserved honor, but I think sometimes we have short-term memory. It was only 3 years ago when Nikola was 300 pounds. And obviously he made a commitment at that point in time to really get into the best shape of his life, and he's stayed there. Something clicked. Everybody in the world can talk to you about something, but until you look yourself in the mirror and make that commitment to be the best version of yourself, it doesn't matter who and what they're saying. So obviously, Nikola, since that point in time, has become the embodiment of the culture that I tried to create the first day I got here. And, when I got the job in Sacramento, I said the same thing. My first year was going to be about changing the culture. Did that in Sacramento. When I got the job here in Denver, my first thing was taking a team that had just won 30 games. But more importantly, when I got here and I talked to people, it seemed like there was not a winning culture in place. And that was priority number one, with player development being number two. And I think since year one, Joel, to year 6, I think we have done a really good job in both those areas of creating a culture, growing that culture, sustaining that culture through year 6, as well as the player development, making sure that all the players that come through our doors are better players every single season. And obviously in a few weeks, a bunch of our young players will be back in our gym as we continue to work on all areas of our player development program. But I've said it countless times, you guys already know this. As a head coach, I know how fortunate I am to have my best player in Nikola Jokic embody the culture that we've tried to create here from day one. Being a work team, being a team that trusts in one another, and obviously being a team that is completely selfless. Checking your ego at the door, getting over yourself. It's never about the individual, it's always about the group. And obviously Nikola has grown into that. And that's a great luxury to have.
Next, we'll go to Katie Wingy.
Hey, Coach. Great to see you. I'm going to ask kind of a non-basketball related question here, a two-parter, of course, because you know me, I get my money's worth.
No worries, Katie. You deserve it. You've earned it.
In a season that you've talked about being the most strenuous on not only your players' mental health, but your mental health, how does the head coach of the Denver Nuggets decompress and take some time off and get yourself back on track and a little bit more balanced in that regard? And then also, do you have any plans to travel and visit any of your players and spend time with them in their hometowns or home states this summer?
Okay. For the first question, right when the season ended, a few days later, my wife, my 2 daughters, and I boarded a plane and flew back to New York to see my parents. I had not seen my mother and my father in 2 years. It was literally 2 years to Father's Day weekend. So we all know that tomorrow is not promised. My parents are not young, like most of our parents. So that was, for me, priority number one. You can talk, you can text, you can FaceTime, you can Zoom, but nothing replaces giving your mother and father a hug. And that was good for me, my wife, but also really good for my 2 daughters. I want them to know my parents. I want them to know and have memories of their grandparents. So that was really important from a personal level for me and my family, going to visit my folks back in New York. And that right away kind of grounds you and brings you back to reality. So that was a great 5 days that we spent with them. I'm actually getting ready to go to Vegas my youngest daughter and her club volleyball team here, Colorado Juniors, they qualified for nationals in Vegas. So we're going to go out to Vegas, and I haven't been able to see her play all year long because of our schedule, the rules being only one parent can go watch their kids play. So finally having a chance just to go be a family, watch her, support her and her teammates, that's going to be something I'm looking forward to as well. Regarding going to see some of our players, we lose game 4 to Phoenix. And one of the neatest things about Nikola Jokic is this. I'm done with my media with you guys, and he's getting ready to come on. And he said, hey, coach, before you leave, I'll come downstairs and we'll have a beer together. And so we wound up hanging out for like 2 hours after that game, talking about the season, talking about the summer, talking about his horses, talking about everything. And what I also say is, I don't know, and many owners like Josh Kroenke. Josh Kroenke was there with me, Nikola, and Josh Kroenke for 2 hours after getting eliminated in the second round. And when I went home that night, I said, man, we got a really unique setup here. We're all disappointed we lost. No one was happy, especially getting swept on our home court. But to have an owner and an MVP who were just so down to earth and committed to doing whatever it takes to be better and find ways to win a championship. Those 2 hours were so important. But I joked with Nikola, hey, I'm coming over soon. He goes, coach, you can come, but you're not going to find me. So, I think it's time to give some of our players some space. We had a long grind, as you know, Katie, in the bubble, a quick 2-month turnaround, and then right back at it for this year. 72 regular season games, very condensed, and then the 10 postseason games. So there's a chance that I'll wind up doing something later on in the summer. But right now, I want all of our players to get away, to decompress, to spend time with their family, their friends, their loved ones, and then we can figure that stuff out. But the reason you asked the question is because that's something I have long enjoyed doing. And hopefully with the travel restrictions and COVID, hopefully resolving a little bit, I'll be able to get back to doing that because that's something that I enjoy. And I think that's something that allows me to have some of the relationships that I do have.
All right, we still got a few more here for you, Coach. We'll go to Harrison Wind.
Hey, Coach, good to see you. I got a question about Nikola as well.
Hey, Harrison, I got a question for you.
What's up?
So if I come to your fancy bar down there, you gonna buy me a drink?
Oh, of course. We got a table all set up for you already. So let me know when you're coming.
All right, I'm gonna take you up on that.
Yeah. So let me know. Beers are on us. But you had spoke a couple of times during the playoffs about just the physical and mental fatigue that Nikola was going through unexpectedly, of course, after playing every game and shouldering the load that he did. My question is, with no Jamal, at least at the beginning of the season, and how that puts even more responsibility on Nikola, and coming off of last season, obviously he wants to play in every game, but have you had any initial thoughts on how you might manage him in terms of minutes and maybe rest next season, just as of right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. Nikola never likes to sit. We've talked about that plenty of times, and I think this year, him playing all 72 games played a small part in him winning MVP. I still think if he would have missed 5 games, he still should have won MVP. If he would have missed 10 games, I don't know, I'm biased. I still think he should have won MVP. But next season, after the grind of the bubble this year, the playoffs, I think we almost have to do it ahead of time, Harrison. What I mean by that is, when the schedule comes out in August, whenever it comes out, look at the schedule ahead of time, see when there's a really condensed schedule, 4 and 5 back-to-backs, and do it ahead of time because now you're taking all the emotion out of it. Because what happens is this. Okay, yeah, we're getting ready to play this game. Maybe that's a game that Nikola can sit. Then you lose a game that you're supposed to win. And then you say, well, we can't have Nikola sit. We got to win this game. And you want to avoid that. I think taking the emotion out of it, doing it ahead of time, and saying, hey, listen, these are the 5 to 10 games maybe that you might sit because of rest for your body, for your mind, whatever it is. So that's a discussion that we'll continue to have, but your point is a fair one. It's something that we have discussed going into next season. How can we help him so at the end of the season, you get out of the first round, he's not completely shot. And I felt in that Phoenix series, taking nothing away from them. You know, I'm not, Phoenix, they kicked their ass. They're a very good basketball team. I always try to give the other team credit, win or lose, which certain teams don't always do. But I think Nikola is that important for us. And if we really want to play late into the playoffs, we're going to need him to be able to help us win 16 postseason games. That's the ultimate goal. So we'll look at that. And obviously other guys are going to have to step up. Jamal goes down on April 12th. We had 18 games to go at that time. We go 13-5, which is really remarkable. As I mentioned earlier, Harrison, and you know this, it's Jamal, it's Monte, it's Will, it's PJ. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Can we replicate that over an 82-game season? Maybe really hard. So we'll need other guys to step up until Jamal gets back. And we'll need Nikola to be playing at an MVP level once again, which I anticipate happening.
All right, we have time for one more here. We'll end with Brandon Cristal.
Hey, Coach, I'm getting off a plane here in California, so I'll make it quick. I asked a question to Tim about not overreacting and changing your personnel. So I know that personnel, obviously, you have input, but that's not, 100% your call. How do you guard against not wanting to change a lot of what you do philosophically and know that what you do works and it just came short this year? I guess, stick to your guns, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I mean, coming in and out a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your question, Brandon. I think you always have to, we talked earlier about taking some time to self-reflect on what we can do better, what I can do better. And I think long gone are the days of, this is my philosophy and I'm sticking to it. The game is always changing. And if you're not willing to change with the game will pass you by. I firmly believe that. I am the son of an NBA coach. I'm the son of a coach, rather, a teacher. And the game has changed dramatically since my father was coaching with the New York Knicks under UV Brown, under Chuck Daly and the Bad Boys, under Jeff Van Gundy with the New York Knicks, to 2021. The game is always changing. And ideally, you'd like to be ahead of those changes, be ahead of the curve. But I think we always take time during the off season to look at ways that we can change. And we've changed in my 6 years. We have adjusted and changed our philosophy in different areas of the game that have helped us. And obviously when you're a bottom 5 defensive team and last in 3-point defense a few years ago, and then you morph into the number 1 3-point defensive team, that wasn't luck, that wasn't happenstance, that was, we're going to make these changes. So you take a really honest look at who you are, and you understand, okay, we have to be better in these areas. We failed. Regular season, we were a top 6 offense. I think we were 11th in defense. And in the playoffs, our defense was awful. And we got away with it against Portland because we were able to score at a high rate. Against Phoenix, a much better defensive team, our offense wasn't there. We couldn't make shots. We barely scored the ball, and we couldn't get any stops. So, we have to take a long, hard look at who we are, what we do, and what we can be better at, and how we can be better at those things so we don't repeat that next year. And that's something I think we've done every year, and that's why we've been one of the few teams that's found a way to really continue to improve and advance every year. Now, I'm sure there are people out there saying, well, you didn't get back to Western Conference Finals. This year was a failure. I would not agree with that. Not at all, because every season is different. Every season brings its own trials and tribulations. So this year we didn't make it to the Western Conference Finals, but everything that we were facing and was thrown at us, we did the best to our abilities, and hopefully next year we can learn from this experience and be better next season.
All right, Coach, that'll do it. We appreciate you taking the time today.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody. Have a great summer.